This is the pre-trip inspection for the state of Maryland on a passenger bus. Once again, the only thing you do, you follow the information that's on the checklist. The NBA will issue you this checklist right here to follow as you do the pre-trip inspection. Once again, just like every other vehicle, you have to start with the air brake test. You have to complete the air brake test first before you can move on to everything else. So, let's get started with that. First of all, you want to let the instructor know that the rear wheels are chalk, which is this thing right here would be placed behind the rear wheel so the vehicle don't roll. Make sure that your air pressure is reading between 120 and 140 psi. Okay, at that point, you can shut the vehicle off, turn the key to the on position, push the parking brake in, and hold the service brake down. You want to hold the service brake down for 1 minute. You want to make sure you don't lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure at 1 minute. At that point, you want to make sure you ask the instructor to time you to make sure you held it down for at least 1 minute. Once the minute is up, I'm going to fan the brake. And as I fan the brake, the air pressure will drop down. When it drops down to 60 psi, you'll get a warning light right here to indicate that the air pressure is low. You continue to fan the brake until the parking brake pop out between 20 and 40 psi. What you want to do, you want to make sure you tell the instructor all that stuff before you actually do it. Because it's not good enough to sit up here and do it and not tell them what you're doing. But you want to make sure you tell them before it happens. Okay, let's walk our way through it. Only thing we're going to do is exactly what we just told them we was going to do. Make sure that the rear wheels are chalk. The air pressure gauge is reading between 120 and 140 psi. I'm going to turn the vehicle off. I'm going to turn the key just to the on position, not running, but to the on position. Use my hand to push the parking brake in. I'm going to let the brake settle for just a second or two. Then I'm going to put my foot on the service brake. And I'm going to hold it down for 1 minute. I'll have the instructor time me to make sure I held it down for at least 1 minute. And what I'm looking for at this time is making sure I don't lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure. So I'm going to hold my brake firm to the ground. I'm going to watch these gauges right here and make sure they're not dropping. You just hold it firm to the ground and the instructor will let you know when your time is up. Okay, at this point, we're going to say our minute is up. We didn't lose no more than 3 pounds of pressure. Now I'm going to fan this brake. As I fan this brake, the air pressure will drop down. When it drops down to 60 psi, these warning lights will come on right here. I'll continue to fan the brake until this parking brake pop out between 20 and 40 psi. So you just keep fanning. Once that parking brake pop out, that indicates that your air brakes are working. At this point, I'm going to start the vehicle back up. And I'm going to allow my air pressure to build back up. Once it build up above 60 psi, these warning lights will go off. I'll continue to build the air pressure back up to the normal operating range, which is between 120 and 140 psi. Now, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and inspect the other items that's on the checklist while my air pressure is building up. I'm going to start with my turn signals. Check the right turn signal, make sure that's working on the dash. The left turn signal is working on the dash. The four-way flashers is working on the dash. I'm going to turn my front headlight on, and I'm going to check my high beams, make sure that they're working on the dash. I'm going to check my city horn and my air horn, make sure both of those are working. I'm going to turn my heater and defrost on, make sure that they're working. My interior lights are working. I'm going to check my entry door. Once my air pressure builds up, the air pressure has to build up in order for that to work. But I'll come back to that in just a second. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to check my windshield wipers and windshield washer fluid, make sure that they're working. Okay. I'm going to check my traffic monitoring devices, which is nothing more than just the mirrors. Check the mirrors, my flat mirror, my convex mirror, make sure they're properly adjusted to me. I want to check the crossover mirrors, make sure that they're working correctly. I'll check that flat mirror and that convex mirror over here the same as I did over here. I'll inspect this overhead mirror right here, make sure I can see my passengers and my passengers can see me. Continue to build the air pressure back up. And I'm going to go ahead and mention my emergency equipment. I have a BC fire extinguisher that's properly mounted and fully charged. That's located right here. Underneath here, inside that compartment right there, I have my 3 triangle reflectors. And I would also mention to the instructor, if this vehicle was equipped with circuit breakers, if it was equipped with fuses, I'll have spare fuses. But because it don't have spare fuses, it's equipped with circuit breakers. Okay. Now that my air pressure is up, I'm gonna go ahead and inspect this door again. Make sure that door open and closed. At this point, I'll explain to the instructor that my air pressure has risen above 60 psi. So the warning lights has gone off, but I'll continue to build the air pressure back up between 120 and 140 psi. So I'm just going to accelerate slightly to assist my air pressure in building up. I want to go ahead and mention my seat belt. Make sure my seat belt is tight and secure, properly mounted, not cracked or frayed, and make sure it snaps in place. Continue to build the air pressure up. Okay, now that my air pressure is above 120 psi, that indicates my air brakes are working. Now I'm going to do a parking brake test. With the parking brake on, I'm going to put the vehicle down and drive. I'm going to accelerate slightly, make sure the vehicle don't move. I'll put it in reverse, accelerate slightly, make sure the vehicle don't move. Put it back in neutral. Now I want to do a service brake test. To do a service brake test, I'm going to put my foot on the service brake, push the parking brake in, put it down and drive, make sure the vehicle don't move. Put it in reverse, make sure the vehicle don't move. Put it back in neutral, pull the brake out, and I would explain to the instructor the proper way of doing a service brake test is that I'll let the vehicle coast for about 5 miles an hour, put my foot on the brake, make sure the vehicle comes to a complete stop and it don't pull from one side to the other. Okay? At that point, I'm going to turn the vehicle off. I'm going to make sure I have my key in my hand. As I get up from the vehicle, I walk down here. I want to inspect the seat. I want to make sure this seat is properly mounted to the frame and the frame is properly mounted to the floor. Inspect the seat belt. Make sure the seat belt snaps in place and make sure it releases. I want to inspect this emergency exit right here. The proper way of doing that, I'll push up, make sure that the emergency exit is working correctly, pull back down and make sure it latch. The emergency exit right here, the proper way of checking that, I'll pull the red handle down, push the glass out. To put it back, I'll pull the glass back in, push the red handle back up, make sure that the emergency exit is working correctly. As I walk back here, I'll check all these seats and seat belts the same as I did the one in the front. I'll inspect this emergency exit here the same as I did the one in the front. Back here, if the key was in the ignition or the vehicle was running, I'll open this door and push out, then I'll get a warning buzzer. I'll close it back, latch it back in place, the warning buzzer goes off. As I walk back here, I'll inspect this emergency exit the same as I did that emergency exit right there. As I walk down the aisle, I'll make sure it's clean and clear, no obstacles or obstructions that could possibly trip anyone up. Okay? Come here. Now I just want to review the checklist real quick. We did the air brake test. We did the parking brake test. We did the service brake test. We checked the light indicators. We talked about the emergency equipment. We talked about the windshield, the traffic monitoring devices, which is your mirrors. We talked about the windshield wipers and windshield washer fluid. We checked the heater and defrost, and we also checked the horn. We checked the entry door, which is located right there, the emergency exits, and the passenger seats. Now we're going to walk outside. Release this. side, I want to check the clearance lights. Make sure the clearance lights, they should be amber in color. They tight and secure, properly mounted. I want to check the windshield. Make sure the windshield are not crack, damage, or any illegal stickers. I'll check these mirrors right here. Make sure the mirrors are tight and secure, properly mounted, not cracked or damaged. I'll check the crossover mirrors. Make sure they tight and secure, properly mounted. I'll check the turn signals. Make sure the turn signals are clean and clear, tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. The front headlights are clean and clear, tight and secure. These marker lights right here are tight and secure, properly mounted. There's no leaks on the ground. I'm gonna unlatch the hood on both sides. As I unlatch the hood, I'll pull the hood back. I want to make sure it locks in place and not rock back on me. Over here, I'll check the oil dipstick. The proper way of checking that is to pull the dipstick out, wipe it clean, stick it back in there, pull it back out, and make sure it's above the add mark. This right here is my power steering reservoir. I'll check this dipstick here by pulling it out, wiping it clean, sticking it back in there, pulling it back out, make sure it's above the add mark. The transmission dipstick. With the vehicle running in neutral, I'll pull the dipstick out, wipe it clean, stick it back in there, pull it back out, and make sure it's above the add mark. This is where I add my engine oil right here. I'll make sure that cap is on tight and it's not leaking any oil. Okay, I'll check all the hoses and clamps, make sure everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, and nothing's leaking. My frame is tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds, not missing any bolts. My steering system, I'll check the steering rod, the steering box, the hose and coupling, the pitman arm, the nut and the carter pin, the drag link, knuckle nut carter pin, and the tie rod. Everything is mounted correctly, tight and secure, and nothing's leaking. The leaf springs, they're not cracked, damaged, welded, repaired, shifted, or broken. The U-bolts are tightly holding the leaf springs together. The leaf spring hangers are tight and secure, properly mounted with no illegal welds. The shock absorber, tight and secure, properly mounted, and is not leaking. I'll check the brake hose and line. Make sure that it's tight and secure, properly mounted, not leaking. The line is not cracked or frayed. Okay. The top of the tire is evenly worn. It should be no less than 4/32 of tread depth. The side of the tire is no cracks, damage, or any illegal patches. The rim is tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds. The brake drum, tight and secure, properly mounted, no illegal welds. Behind the brake drum, if I can see it, is the brake liner. I will make sure there's no oil, grease, or contamination on the brake liner. The lug nuts are tight and secure, properly mounted, no rust spots or shiny spots indicating any looseness. I also want to mention the tire pressure on the front should be 110, and on the back it should be 95. Okay, I'll walk to this side. Over here, I'll check the coolant reservoir, make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted, make sure it's not leaking, make sure the cap is on tight. The windshield washer fluid is tight and secure, properly mounted, not leaking. Also over here, I'll check the frame, suspension, brakes, tire, wheel assembly on this side, the same as I did on that side there. Walk over here, check this lens, make sure it's not cracked, damaged, or missing any screws. Turn signal is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. Back here, I'll check the frame, suspension, brake, tire, wheel assembly in the rear, the same as I did in the front. Okay. This is my fuel compartment. I'll inspect, if I can see it, the cap, straps, and hoses. Everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, nothing's leaking. Look on the ground, make sure that there's no puddles on the ground indicating anything leaking. Check this reflector right here, make sure it's tight and secure, properly mounted. Back here is my rear clearance lights. They're red in color, they're tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. I'll check the turn signals, the brake lights, the reverse lights, tag lights, and lens. Make sure everything is tight and secure, properly mounted, not missing any screws. I'll inspect the lights and lenses on this side the same as I did on that side there. Come over here. I'll inspect this rear axle over here, the frame, suspension, brake, tire, wheel assembly on this side the same as I did on the other side. A battery compartment. I'll inspect the post, the cable, and the hold down. Everything is tight and secure, properly mounted without excessive corrosion around the terminals. Shut that back right here, and pretty much as we go through the checklist, once again, we talked about the external lights, we talked about the lenses, we checked the fluid levels, which included the oil, the power steering, the transmission fluid. We talked about the steering system. We discussed the tire, the rim, the lug nuts. This vehicle isn't equipped with airbags, but we talked about the springs and the shocks. Talked about the brake liner, the brake hose, the brake contamination that's on the brake liner. We discussed the lenses and the reflectors, the traffic monitoring devices, which is the mirrors. We talked about the battery, the fuel tank, and the frame. As long as you cover everything that's on this checklist, that's all you need to pass the pre-trip exam.